Good morning, everybody. My name is Josh Brunval. I'm here with Cribble, and I wanted to give you a little introduction about the tool and myself. I'm actually a former Cribble customer. Been doing this stuff for over 5 years, and really excited to show you what we got. To my right here, Rusty Brownlee here from ClearShark. He's going to dive in and talk a little bit about some of the use cases here, as it specifically revolves around some of the DoD applications, specifically the Army today. So what is Cribble? I unfortunately would agree that this probably resonates with 75% or more of you today. The last 15 years we spent, being told, if we want to ever use data, we need to just throw it in the SIM and it's there when we need it. Over time, a lot of these tools started developing additional fields. Data just got more voluminous, verbose, and it started to change very rapidly as more applications became more available to commercial and public sector use. We started to have a huge problem with this data growth issue. So it posed a lot of challenges for us. So obviously data doesn't really, it doesn't bode well if you just stick it in an environment and it's just collecting dust. You pay for that in certain ways, right? It's going to be sitting on disk. You're going to be using different tools to search and analyze that. But more often than not, it's not really guaranteed to be necessary data you are going to see and touch every single day. So what that ends up doing is, if we have different use cases across different teams, they're going to then be wasting a lot of time waiting for this data to be returned to do any kind of adequate action or decision making against. And quite frankly, we start to get introduced to different tools to solve some of those problems that all started from a data growth issue. So today, we're starting to see all these disparate tools come from collecting at the edge level, using the strengths of each unique tool to correlate, aggregate, coalesce, and then dump them into a particular tool that either someone paid for, they prefer to use, and if you are a shop that they have designated a single destination, that is the tool that they're going to throw everything into. And from personal experience, there is a right place and a wrong place for data. It is not meant to just be a warehouse that you sift through. It just turns into a data swamp. And so Cribble came along as a source and destination agnostic tool, meeting you where you are in your current mission requirements, whether that's on-prem, in your own cloud. We can run on a Linux system that you entirely control, and then we do have some SaaS offerings as well. But what that looks like today is, this is our flagship product, where we can collect data, centrally aggregate, correlate, transform it to whatever mission set, destination that you need to have your data ready for your analysts and whoever the decision makers are, so they can make appropriate, quick decisions. So a little bit about this. Cribble Stream, like I said, is the main product that we have. This can be installed on your own on-prem environment. And the main purpose of Stream is to collect those disparate data sources, bring them together, normalize them, filter, and then route to wherever you may need that data for later. So a little bit about the full product suite here. This is what we call as the data engine. The first one is Cribble Edge. This is an entirely optional tool to install. We do pair with your current installations of a Splunk Forwarder, Elastic Beat Agent, or if you already have other TCP or UDP streams that you're already collecting from today. But since this is an option, we can run this in Docker, we can run this in all your already installed hosts around in your network. I just talked about Cribble Stream. This is where we process and route our data, make that intelligent decision making where we need data, where it needs to be used for later down the road use, or any other place to have more cost effective and just smarter decision making around how we're going to handle and treat data for today. I'm going to dive into our first SaaS offering. So this is a self-managed S3. So store later, replay it when you need it, or store for later and you can replay it later. But this is what we kind of suggest to avoid paying for those exorbitant costs today, for not throwing your data all at once into a SIM, route your data to a simple, cost-effective S3 storage, and then leverage your SIM to deal with the pruned, trimmed, only a short window of time data that you actually care about. And it's a lot easier to sift through 90 days as opposed to 7 years or insert your retention policy. The last product that we have, again, it's a SaaS offering. This is where we have our federated search platform. Search data at rest, but like 80% of data today just gets processed, just sit and never be touched again. The idea about a federated search is that we can go and collect that data and know if it's going to be useful or not, then summon it to go get processed and then put into our system of analytics that we choose. So that's a little bit of a quick introduction. I want to go hand it over to Rusty real quick, and I'll be back in a second.
How you doing? Rusty Brownlee. I work with OptoClearShark. I am a systems engineer who has been involved in helping build a next generation security operations center, and we're integrating Cribble into our next generation security operations center, primarily to do what he was talking about. As we do this with the security operations center, it's important for us to look at what's actually coming off the wire one way or another and evaluating it before it even gets into the SIM. If it should be enriched, if it should be filtered, if it should be summarized, if it should be routed in a different way for the use cases that we're using for that SOC. What we're dealing with here is we've got a lot of unstructured data sources. We're able to structure them in flight so that by the time they get to the SIM, they're useful to be searched immediately. We route some of this information as well to directly to S3 because we know it's not useful up front, but we may need it later for forensics or investigations. We normalize the data so that it can be correlated with other data sources at the time it's ingested so that prior to even searching it, we can correlate it immediately in real time or near real time. And we evaluate these as we build use cases. So the use cases that we decide we need to have in the field, we know what data we need ahead of time for the use case. If that data matches a use case, we bring it into the SIM. If it doesn't match a use case, we put it into storage for later use. If we do need it later, let's say we have an actual use case, it has triggers, we have detections, we don't know as much as we need to know, we can actually use Cribble Replay to pull the raw logs back into an investigation to do further forensics, not paying for it until we actually need it in the SIM. And then we can actually enrich this data in flight. So let's say we have IP addresses or we have threat information. As it's coming off the ingest, we can enrich it so that the second it hits the SIM, we know if this is something that needs to be investigated as a threat, investigated as an IP location. Rather than doing it at search time, it's done in flight. It's much quicker to search it at that point. One of the other things that we've been working with Cribble on is the Army has a unified data reference architecture, UDRA, and they also have the Army's Army Data Plan strategic objectives. And we've been helping them actually map how we would actually use Cribble Stream. Edge is a subproduct of Stream and Replay is a subproduct of Stream, to map the use cases and the standards that are in UDRA and the Army Data Plan so that we can have resilience in that data, match it to the needs of the Army and the actual reference architecture that the Army has. From what we've learned this week about multi-domain operations, it's very critical that the right data gets to the right platform at the right time. Cribble would be an excellent source to map those things to the standards that the Army is using, and we've mapped these here. Don't have a lot of time to actually dig into them here, but we're more than welcome to talk about them later.
Thank you, Rusty. So this is just our kind of public backing, right? We have a proven track record over the last 7 years, being a small startup, and we have a lot of large scale customers in and around the federal government that are using licenses well over into the hundreds of terabytes. So we do have a tool that is trusted and been tested in and validated in and around the federal space. All right, so what kind of have we learned today? We do have a solution to solve that data growth problem. And if it's left unchecked, it can really start to be very costly in terms of just what you're paying the bills for every month. It could be very time consuming for the folks that are actually doing the legwork of getting data onboarded, making sure that the systems are leveraging the appropriate data, and that ultimately the downstream users of that data can get what they need very fast in and out, make that action, get that disruption that they need to move forward. We operate in really low bandwidth environments. So, I remember doing some TDI kits back in 2018, and we had a 2 meg, bandwidth pipe that we had to deal with. And the Cribble Edge node can handle that in a little bit easier way than I had to deal with on some of the other collection tools that we use. I think the most important thing, though, is the interoperability that this tool can enable. So a few slides ago, we showed kind of the Cribble stream as this hub and spoke relationship to what already exists in your network to where you are sending your data to. This kind of creates endless possibilities. My former place, I was in a federal law enforcement agency for over 5 years, and we leveraged this tool to bridge the gap between other commercial off-the-shelf products where the real pain there is they have you put your data in their tool, and now you're kind of locked into that platform. There's no way you're going to be able to pull it out. So what we were able to do is with this choice, flexibility, and control with having Cribble as this hub of our data pipeline infrastructure, we were able to remove that vendor lock-in and then leverage the tools together in parallel. And I said this before, there's a right and a wrong place for data, right? So no need to rely on one tool to do everything for you. But if you have a data strategy that enables that interoperability, you then can have multiple tools do the right job for you, or just lean in on the preferences of the user, right? If it's something that they're using because it was purchased or that they're comfortable with, they get to keep that. So in closing, these are not the right booths. We're right over here in T6, right out the door. But we would love to get in contact with you. This is some of the Cribble information or Cribble contacts that you can reach out to for some information. Would love to connect with you, and we have time. We have a little bit of time for like Q&A, unless you wanted to add something before that.
I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So we wanted to be quick and want to interact with the folks that are here today. So does anybody have any questions that off the top of their heads? All right. Sweet. Is that right?
I think probably one of the most common questions I get though is how do we use it? It's got a user interface. Does it have configuration files? I think that would probably be something we can.
All right. Yeah. So before closing, I guess how is the tool look? It is a commercially available tool. It has a user interface. So it's managed by a backend Git. So for version controlling, you're pushing out your pipeline changes to manipulate and route and transform your data. All of that is controlled in a backend Git, or if you have GitLab, or I've even seen people use GitHub, they can actually maintain all those change controls. So rather than going on a CLI, changing configuration files directly, reloading the system, we have a nice interface that you can make those changes right there, commit and deploy, and then it will spread out into the environment for processing. What this enabled me to do personally, I was a former Splunk infrastructure guy. I did that for too long. And what was difficult in the data onboarding process was that you had to basically convince your entire infrastructure to accept a new change of data. So what that meant that I had to do was push those changes out, wait for those changes to be replicated, and then once I could do that, I could begin testing and validating the data as it showed up. When Cribble came into my life, I was able to actually save 20 hours a week on myself alone. I was a one-man, two-man team at times, but having the time back is something that is extremely valuable. So very easy to use.
I think that's one of the most powerful things
You
I've
want to
found with it. I'd say one of the most powerful things of the tool is that you can pick up and test your data streams in flight with live data and see how your changes would be impacted downstream. If you like it, you can commit it. If you don't, you make adjustments. It is mind blowing how different the setup of the data streams are in Cribble than they are in any other tool that you have to do through command line. Push it out, wait for it to replicate. You get to see what your work looks like immediately through the user interface. It's a big part of what hasn't been touched here, but it also makes it so that you can immediately have productive value even without being a coder. So I think that's probably the biggest question I've gotten from people is like, well, how does it really differ? It differs in the fact that you can step in and use it day one and understand how data streams work and how changing them impacts all your other tools downstream.
All right. We have a little bit of time if anybody has any questions. If not, thank you very much for your time.